Bernard with Peerless, and on the screen, I believe you see Ron Cumlander of DK-LOK, Andy Glooly of DK-LOK, and Charlie Hathaway, also of Peerless. I'm going to get going here with just a quick introduction of Peerless, and then we're going to turn it over to Ron and Andy. So we are a trusted 110-year-old provider of process components. We help diverse and skilled customers with their complex projects and industry challenges with attention to safety, detail, efficiency, and reliability. We go to market in three different major segments of our business. Our high-temp fabrication division, we machine scientific surfaces for laboratory and medical applications, as well as some refractory solutions. The key here is non-metallic materials that we machine. Our process group, this is our legacy piece of business. We deal with the MRO applications. Greg Barrow, who's also joining us, he heads up that division. And our Procore team, our Procore segment primarily deals with our OEM customers building modular, skidded, custom engineered systems. And we do our Procore division. We have actually a good diverse group of people here joining us from both our process group and our Procore group. We do have extensive experience servicing the OEM markets. We do have 3 application engineers in-house to help with those challenging specifications I discussed. We do have a deep understanding of project timelines. We understand if we can help our customers get a project or two out the door early, stakeholders are happy. We do offer a unique combination of technical expertise, industry insight, and certainly a collaborative approach to ensure project success. Also, we love the documentation. We believe our competitors hate it, so we've chosen to embrace it. And when we do need additional help from our skilled network, we do rely on many experts across a diverse array of process components. In fact, up here, you'll see Ron Cumlander of DK-LOK, who will be joining us. And without further ado, I'm going to just bring in Charlie to mention some housekeeping, and we're going to then turn it over to Ron and Andy. Again, thanks for joining us. Charlie?
Yes, thank you very much, Kevin. The main thing I want to talk about is questions. We want to make this presentation as beneficial as possible for everyone involved, so we definitely encourage questions throughout it. Whether you want a topic expanded on a bit or have an application-specific question, please do not hesitate to ask. There are a couple different ways to ask those questions. The first is by clicking the chat icon on the toolbar up top. Chat window should appear to your right if it's not already there, and you can just drop your question in there. I'll be monitoring that, and once an opportunity presents itself, I will ask your question to Ron. Additionally, you can use the raise the hand button. Again, once the opportunity allows itself, I will then give you the power to unmute yourself. Once I do that, you can unmute and once I do that, your mute button should turn from gray to black, and then you can unmute and ask your question directly to Ron. If you don't get a chance to ask your question during the presentation or think of a question you would have liked to ask, don't worry, there will be an opportunity at the very end for any additional questions. Well, without further ado, I will turn over to Ron and we can get started. Thank you again for joining us.
Thank you very much, and I will get my presentation up here, and we will be able to go. Okay, so thank you for the opportunity to make the case for DK-LOK. This is going to be like drinking water through a fire hose because we only have a certain amount of time. So I may be at a little bit of a rapid pace here, but certainly do raise your hand and answer your questions through the chat, and we'll do everything we can to take care of you. So first of all, I want to give you a little history. This is the first two-ferrule tube fitting patent from 1947 that was developed by Mr. C.B. Crawford. The one thing I'd like to point out here is the back ferrule of the back flange is very flat and is at a 90-degree perpendicular angle to the OD of the tube, as well as the surface inside the nut that it interacts with. And the reason I point that out is this was the first patent for the most recognized brand currently in the market of Swagelok. This lasted 17 years. And then before it expired, Swagelok tweaked especially the back ferrule flange angle to 15 degrees from a 90-degree perpendicular, and change the angle of the nut inside to match that 15-degree angle. And they may have made some other tweaks, but those are the most obvious. And that tweak alone earned them a second patent that ran until 1981. So they had patent protection in the U.S. market for 34 years. And of course, certainly branded themselves over that period of time. Now, the original back ferrule from them at that time incorporated a selectively hardened nose that was hardened through high temp carburization. And so that injected carbon into the nose of this stainless steel to give it the differential of hardness to grip the tube and hold it against blowout, and to deliver the required bite depth to seal against high pressure gas molecules. And so this was the cat's meow for hardening stainless steel at that particular time. Now, as we move forward through history, their 34 years of patent protection did expire in 1981, and many competitors got into the instrumentation fitting business to compete with them. And Parker at that time had brought in a two-ferrule design after the patent called A-LOK, and that is still available in the marketplace today. But in the late 90s, Parker introduced a new hardening process for hardening the surface of stainless steel that was trademarked as Parker Super Case. And that is still on their product today. They completely case hardened their back ferrule and their single ferrule offering. And that was technically called coasterizing, named after the professor Coaster out of the UK, whom Parker sponsored his work. So it allows you to harden the front ferrule to a controlled depth. You can choose how deep you want to harden this. But the key to the coasterizing process, it is a low temp nitriding process that controls that process so that no carbon forms. So it maintains the natural characteristics of corrosion resistance from the base metal. So when they entered the market with this new hardening process, they actually attacked the market leader at that time through a Clorox bleach test, where they would go in and take an empty Gerber baby food jar or something else and pour Clorox bleach in it and drop an A-LOK back ferrule and a Swagelok back ferrule into the bleach and come back the next day, and this would be the result. All that carbon in the nose of that ferrule would show this particular result. So at that point, Swagelok realized they needed to address that. And virtually every other competitor in the market that had entered after 1981 used this same method early on after Parker introduced the new coasterizing method for hardening stainless steel. So as Swagelok went down this road to address the corrosion, they were also approached by a major oil and gas firm and asked them if they could make a compression fitting that would work on a new tube material developed by Sandvik called Super Duplex 2507. Very lightweight, high pressure capability, very slick, and very hard to grip. So those two things in combination resulted in the advanced geometry back ferrule patent from Swagelok that was awarded in 2000, and they introduced the product in New Orleans, Louisiana at the ISA show with this brochure right here. And the back ferrule completely had a different shape, and they developed by this time a new hardening process to address the corrosion. So basically, what Swagelok did was they took their traditional back ferrule, which I refer to as a full mass back ferrule, and they went into the flange area on the inside and machined a groove to take some of the meat out of it. And then the outer shaft, they conically tapered it from the flange down to create a very thin cross section right here. So basically, they took muscle and mass out of the ferrule with these two design changes before they applied their SAT-12 hardening process over the entire surface of the ferrule to give it back the strength it needed to have a differential of hardness for gripping and holding and sealing a annealed stainless steel tube, and at that time the Super Duplex tube that had been introduced by Sandvik. Once Swagelok accomplished this, They then rolled this design over into stainless steel. When they made the first full mass ferrules in Super Duplex, the torque was so high they had to put cheater pipes on the wrenches to tighten a turn and a quarter. Changing to this design allowed them to reduce the installation torque to an acceptable level, and then they improved the hardening process. And so this has been in their product since August of 2000. So you see a cutaway here of the current design, how it looks after 1 1/4 turn installation. And this is kind of a cutaway or a rendering of the original full mass bag ferrule after 1 1/4 turns. They look very different in shape because they are, and behavior, but there is no difference in the roles and the responsibility that these two designs have for producing a leak-free connection. And that is through a 1 1/4 turns of the nut, drive the back ferrule into the front ferrule, forcing it down onto the body bevel and the OD of the tube. As the front ferrule stops its forward movement, the back ferrule then honors the angle at its nose and in the back of the front ferrule and dives inward to deliver bite depth into the tube, and then lifts the front ferrule into a live loaded connection to compensate and address vibration and temperature change. So one bullet point that I would like to point out in this brochure that they introduced at that time, they stated that the new design was compatible with the original design Swagelok tube fitting. And that's important to the DK-LOK story that we're presenting to you, or the case that we're presenting to you today, because the DK-LOK fitting that we offer today is the original Swagelok design, but with a patented non-corrosive hardening process on the nose. Swagelok still makes the compatibility statement in their published literature today because they still have millions of original back ferrule connections around the world still performing. Not all fittings get replaced or taken out of service. In fact, many don't. So at the same time that they introduced the new geometry back ferrule, they also applied for and received this patent right here, which is a selective case hardening process at low temperature. Basically, this patent was taking their original design back ferrule and hardening the nose with their SAT-12 or similar process that would present no corrosion. To my knowledge, they never put this into their product. They used this to keep any competitor at arm's length and prevent them from putting this process into their product. And again, why this is important is because this is exactly the product that DK-LOK brings to the market today. We have a full mass back ferrule, and this is very expensive to manufacture, but we believe it's the most robust and best technology for a compression fitting back ferrule in the market. So we mask the ferrule with copper plating, leaving only the nose unmasked so that when we apply the heat treatment, the nose gets hardened, and then we strip the copper plating off, leaving you a full mass back ferrule with only the nose hardened with a non-corrosive hardening process. So here you see a comparison of the designs on the market, which would reflect basically the majority. Over to the left, you see the original Swagelok back ferrule that would have had a corrosive, high-temp carburized nose, which creates a hinge point right here so that the nose turns in abruptly onto the tube OD, delivers the proper bite depth, and with the rest of the ferrule ductile and malleable and unheated, it can bow and squat and energize to perform against vibration and temperature change and provide the installer a low torque installation experience. This also represents the current DK-LOK offering, exact same design, but our hardening process maintains the natural corrosion characteristics of the base metal, and it does not corrode at all. In the center is your Parker A-LOK Super Case design, which many other brands have followed, where they completely harden the entire outer surface of the full mass back ferrule. It eliminates the hinge point, which makes this ferrule much stiffer and harder. So your installation torque is going to be increased as a result of that. And then over here on the right, of course, is the current Swagelok back ferrule design. So here I'll show you a finite element analysis of the two designs. Again, this would represent the original Swagelok and the current DK-LOK design. As you tighten the nut drives the back ferrule forward into the front ferrule, which forces it down onto the OD of the tube and against the body bevel. When the front ferrule's forward movement stops due to the wedging action, the leading edge of the back ferrule dives inward to deliver the required bite depth to prevent blowout and to seal against high pressure gas molecules. Over to the right is the current Swagelok design. You'll see with their geometry back ferrule that the behavior is somewhat different, but same role. Drive the front ferrule to a sealing position, dive inward and provide bite depth into the tube OD, and lift the front ferrule into a live loaded position. So even though the shapes of these ferrules are different and their behavior is different through the 1 1/4 turns pull up, they both have the exact same responsibilities. Drive the front ferrule to seal 100% on the body bevel, dive inward to deliver the proper bite depth, and lift the front ferrule into a live loaded position. So because our design is their original, the best way we knew to establish our performance and our quality and demonstrate it was to do an intermix test against a most well-recognized specification. And intermix would be dumping the components of the products into a brown paper bag, shaking it up, and whatever combination you pulled out, you put that together. Interchange is another term used where you've got an existing nut and ferrule set that's complete from one manufacturer that gets mated with the body of another manufacturer. So again, you've got interchange and intermix. So ASTM F-1387 is a standard spec for the performance of piping and tubing mechanically attached fittings used by the U.S. Navy, GE gas turbines, probably Solar turbines, and other major OEMs. And what it does is it has a battery of tests in it that subjects these mechanical joints, if you will, to the criteria to see how it performs. And tube fittings are a Type 4 class in ASTM F-1387. So we did a complete quality and performance intermix test with Swagelok against this particular spec. And this is our sales brochure right here that you can get a digital copy of. It's basically a summary of all the testing. But we had all this testing third-party certified by a world-renowned entity of TUV Rhineland, and they witnessed all of the testing and provided these documents, which we can also provide to you, on their letterhead with their stamp and their signature, stating that at the end of all this testing, there was zero leakage throughout all the different test criteria with all the different specimens that we subjected to the testing. And as a result of that, DK-LOK Corporation, by this two-page letter to the right bottom down here, will issue a warranty of intermix between DK-LOK and Swagelok if parts get intermixed, as though it's a pure DK-LOK assembly. We don't promote intermix out of practice, but when a customer transitions, the possibility for parts to become intermixed does exist. And so we do warrant that in the event that a Swagelok component gets mixed with a DK-LOK component, or you have interchange where a Swagelok nut and ferrule system is on the end of a tube that gets mated with a DK-LOK body. Again, we treat that through our warranty as though it's a pure DK-LOK assembly. So just going inside the brochure quickly, here's a summary of all the tube wall thicknesses and sizes, their working pressures. When you take the 4 components of Swagelok times the 4 components of DK for intermix, it gives you 16 combinations. But one of those combinations is pure Swagelok, one is pure DK, so we drop those out, leaving 14 combinations of intermixed components that we numbered by specimen number so we could track those specimens' performance through the actual testing. Here are the number of tests that we subjected these intermixed specimens to: a pneumatic proof, a hydrostat, impulse, flex fatigue, tensile, rotary flex, repeat assembly, which is make and break. And again, we didn't do the mercurius, but we did thermal cycling and some other. And again, we can set up a time. You can set up a time with Peerless to walk through a much longer detailed presentation than this to get more information on this. But the pneumatic proof, for example, was the first test that we did. So we built all the spools and we followed the procedure for the pneumatic proof test. And once we completed it, there was no leakage. We could have stopped, but we chose not to. And in the pneumatic proof, ASTM F-1387 gives us the option of testing at 500 PSI or 125% of the working pressure of the tube. So we chose the more severe pressure rating of 125% of the working pressure of the tube. And when we completed this with no leakage, we decided to go further. We shut down, depressurized. We did 2 make-in breaks on every specimen, and we did a second run. No leakage. We shut down, 2 more make-in breaks, did a third run. So we actually tripled the requirements of this particular test in comparison to the requirements of F-1387. Then we rolled right over into the hydrostatic proof test. We did the same thing here. We used the exact same specimens from the pneumatic proof, but we tripled the requirements here before we rolled over into the hydrostatic burst. And then, of course, we took the tubes to burst, and then we moved on from there. So as a result of this, as I mentioned earlier, the president of DK-LOK Corporation, based on a zero leakage throughout all this testing, issues this guarantee of warranty of an intermixed combination of our components with the Swagelok. And here's the TUV Rhineland documents. We can provide you copies of any of this if you'd like to have it to support us and give you the details of the testing. And here's our intermix warranty. We can also provide you a copy of the liability warranty. And again, our mantra is quality without compromise. That's what we pursue. And we do all of this at a lower total cost of ownership. So we believe that partnered with Peerless, with our product offering and the quality, that we are best in class for instrumentation, fittings, and valves. So again, thank you for all that time. That was pretty quick. I know it was like drinking water through a fire hose, but I'll entertain any questions or comments at this time.
All right. Thank you very much, Ron. Give it a second or two for any questions. So it does seem like we do have a question here. It says, will DK-LOK consider manufacturing special configurations of their products or manufacture with materials other than stainless or bronze?
Absolutely. We do manufacture specials. As a matter of fact, we excel in specials. Where most manufacturers require a high minimum order quantity. Typically, if I can get the information from the customer, get a sketch or maybe a competitive part that we need to replace because they've discontinued it, I can typically get that information over to DK-LOK and have a part number, price, and lead time with probably a 10 to 20 piece minimum within about 48 to 72 hours. We also do manufacture our fittings in brass, stainless steel, carbon steel, and all the alloys: titanium, Monel, Hastelloy, Inconel, Incaloy 625, Incaloy 825, Super Duplex. So we work with all the metals as well. So if that answers your question, yes.
Perfect. Thanks, Ron. We do have another one here. Are there similar standards for interchangeability for single ferrule fittings?
DK-LOK does offer a single ferrule fitting. Swagelok does not do any single ferrule at all whatsoever, but Parker and other brands do. There are no real standards. In fact, a compression tube fitting port is not governed by any published standard that we know of, like ASME, ASTM, whatever standards, even though all of your threads and other things are. But we do offer an intermix position with single ferrule product with other brands that offer single ferrule, just as we do on the two ferrule design stance with Swagelok. They don't carry the guarantee because we haven't done the extensive testing, but we will issue a letter of intermix and interchange across those brands.
Thank you for that. It looks like we got another one. What type of certifications do you have, and do you have any type of nuclear certs?
Yes, we have all the certifications of the market leaders. The one cert that we are most proud to hold is ASME N-Stamp. We are one of only maybe a couple of manufacturers in the world that hold the N-Stamp for both their fittings and their valve products. I do know that Parker Hannifin dropped their N-Stamp program several years ago. To my knowledge, Swagelok only holds the N-Stamp for their fittings. I believe they dropped it for their valves 4 or 5 years ago, and I'm not aware of other manufacturers that do hold the N-Stamp for both fittings and valves, which we do.
Perfect. Thanks, Ron. Looks like we got another one too. This one is more directed to Kevin. Could you share a specific example where a Peerless customer achieved measurable cost savings and reduced lead times by switching to DK-LOK tube fittings? How did ASTM F-1387 testing play a role in that success?
Before we kind of launched this webinar, we did poll a bunch of our customers as to why they made a switch when they did make a switch. And certainly the starting point was cost, but certainly quality has to come into play. So they did specifically say that the brochure for the intermix testing was really what pushed them over the top when they were looking at different options to choose. So they made the switch where they can, and they've been great customers ever since. That's a compressor manufacturer that I'm thinking of in the Philadelphia area, actually. So hope that answers it.
Perfect. And then looks like we got one more. I guess similarly, when it comes to specifically cost, how would DK-LOK compare to other brands?
We are cost competitive with most every brand. Again, the only way that we would know how competitive would be for Peerless to be able to have a list of your bill of materials for what your usage is, convert that over to DK-LOK part numbers, and then present you a quote and go from there. But we're competitive pretty much with all brands across the market.
Real quick, just to add on to that, we actually got together a savings calculator where our customers can insert their price and we've actually crossed it over to Swagelok. So if anyone is interested in that, it can really help them see real quickly at a glance what they might expect in savings. So we can send that out in the email. So
perfect. Thank you. We got another one here. Does DK-LOK fittings come with CRNs?
Yes, we have CRNs for all of our product. Yes.
Is it all provinces?
For fittings, yes. For the most common valves, yes. Maybe for something a little bit off the beaten path, we may not have it for all provinces, but the standard industrial product that we sell every day, yes.
Perfect. Thank you. Give it another few seconds here, see if anything else drops in. Does not seem like it. So, Kevin, would you like to close us out here?
Yeah. Well, thanks, Ron, Andy, for joining us. All of our customers out there, we appreciate your time today to spend with us, and we'd certainly be happy to get you any additional information should you wish for it. So we're here at your disposal.
Yes,
thanks again for joining us. Thanks, Ron. Thanks, Andy.
Yep, thank you for the opportunity.
Thanks, Charlie. All right, you got it. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye now.
Thank you.